Welcome. The Leadership Lesson podcast inspires leadership growth in everyone. We have enthralling conversations with top leaders in order to provide you with life-changing lessons. My name is Caleb Nichols. I'm a speaker, a pastor, and a family man. My hope is to inspire spiritual depth and leadership growth in you. I love to sit down with leaders from a variety of fields, hear their personal stories and leadership experiences. This creates the podcast. Enjoy. All right, welcome to the Leadership Podcast. I'm here with my co-host Brad, Bradley Smith, and this is where we talk about leadership, personal leadership, leadership in the home, leadership in business, church, wherever. And today, very exciting, I'm going to interview Brad.
Special, surprise guest.
This is a special podcast. I'm going to interview Brad a bit about his journey into leadership and being a leader in business, in the church as well. You're a leader in the church, and a bit about that. So
Looking forward to
Brad did me as well. He's interviewed me before, so now I get to get him back with some questions. So my first question is the one that you asked me. How would you define leadership?
Wow, that wasn't on the list either. I curveballed that one at you. Well, I think you define it really well, so you have to watch the other podcast to say that. But I'm going to say something different. I'd say leadership is leverage. So as leadership, we're going somewhere. I think everyone's going somewhere, whether you choose to consciously go there or not. But your ability to lead is your ability to get leverage and get more people there, to get more progress on the way to there, to do something bigger than you could do just if you did it on your own. So
That's good.
happy with that?
Really good. And are you comfortable not being on your own? Because it can be hard as a leader. You'll like to do things a certain way. So how have you navigated doing it with others?
Well, it's interesting for me because I've been in leadership with my job since I started. I've never not been in business, so I've had to have teams.
So since what age have you been?
16. So I left school and traded the share market full time for it. Well, actually, I left school to do an apprenticeship as a cover for my share trading, and then
At 16.
and then at about.
It's funny because that doesn't surprise me at all that you would be trading shares at 16.
And then at 19, I left my apprenticeship to go full time with the shares, and so that was interesting because I was on my own. But then after about 2 years, I moved into the motorcycle thing, and that's always been about. I've had to get others and team and leverage. So I do find it difficult to allow others to do things because it's kind of been my show. So it's easier to do it yourself. So definitely
Great challenge of leadership, isn't it? Letting others in.
Man, it's I've been reading a book called Who Not How. I've read it before, but it's a great book about this type of thing. Like the individual wants to know how, and as like the founder or the star player, how is very important. But for leverage, you got to work on the who. And I think really that starts with who I am.
Really good.
And these leadership things really work on who I am.
They do. So tell us about where you're at right now, and then maybe we'll work back into your story from there. So what's your kind of situation at the moment, personally, in the business, leadership roles?
Great question. So, I'm recently married. So I've been married for 2 years. So that's an important leadership role, leader of the home.
You're on a steep learning curve in that leadership position.
But I have a business, and we've been going for 15 years, and it's been interesting because we won 4-time Australian Business of the Year. I won Entrepreneur of the Year 2 times. Telstra Business Awards, International Young Entrepreneur of the Year. So we had like a real steep climb, and then we had incredible crisis, like worse than all that, like incredible media, legal, complete stops basically. And now we've been in turnaround and we're in rebuild mode. So
you've kind of done it all as a leader.
It's been an incredibly, I've had a lot of variety. I'd say that's a nice way to put it.
It's funny. So when we kind of met, you would have been in the downward phase heading into trouble.
Massive.
And then it got, no one thought it was going to get this bad, but it got really bad. But that was kind of when
it's true.
You were kind of doing well, but you were also started to teeter into.
Well, I think that's one of the things of leadership. When things are going well, you don't have to look at yourself too much because you look at your results. When things go really bad, isn't it? You start to look at yourself, and the more you look at yourself, I think you start to ask big questions. And I ended up here.
So you had a massive massive crisis. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, yeah.
So what is the big leadership lesson in tell us a bit about the crisis and what have you learned? Because when I first met you, and you know, everyone was obviously wowed by Young Entrepreneur of the Year, and you've written a book, like all of these. You were when I first met you, you were speaking all around Australia. You're one of the most popular speakers. It was like, you know, it was impressive list of leadership, influence, young entrepreneur. And then it's been an amazing privilege to journey through you with you in the real stuff. Well, the trenches, the decline, what have you learnt in that?
I'd say you pinned it as well. Like, that's the real stuff. It's very easy to have a resume or media stuff.
High five and everyone, and it's awesome.
Yeah, but the real stuff is like when things come against you, and there's going to be, like, it's inevitable. You're going to have incredible challenges in your life, and especially if you're a leader, you're exposed to more opportunity for challenge, because leadership is, I believe, the fundamental element of leadership is you have leverage, which magnifies whatever you do. If you're doing something great, you could do it much greater because you're leading a ship. If something goes bad, well, then there's a bigger net for things to go bad.
And when things go bad, if whether you make the decision or not, the ripple, like you say, the leverage, it creates a ripple that actually affects real people's lives.
It's so true.
And I think a lot of leaders don't maybe respect those formal positions. And think about, you know, if I do things wrong or cut some corners, or the ripple actually, it affects real people.
And that's what happened with us. So we were going really well, we were profitable, winning a lot of awards, raised capital, ready to launch internationally and stuff. And then we had crisis, and we had competitors make allegations that we'd rebirthed motorcycles, which is fraud. So if you Google my name, it will be very entertaining.
And what did you learn? What do you reckon is the biggest lesson in all of it was about 2-3 years of maybe more.
Nearly 4.
Nearly 4
years of and it's like, to be honest, we're still dealing with that. We're working our way out of that. And I think the number one thing I learned is that as a leader, you're ultimately responsible for the culture you create. And the culture you create really produces the results or the mission or accomplishes what you are set out to do. And that starts at the top. And you're fully responsible for your culture. And as the leader, you set the vision, you set the tone, and your job is to hold everyone accountable and yourself accountable to where we're going. So I think I learned that the number one way to just make sure that you keep on track like that is that you've got to protect that culture.
Okay.
And that culture starts with you. Like, I would say culture individually is like your habits, your disciplines, your focuses. Like, and for me, a big thing was my ambition. Like, I was so ambitious, so motivated, so hungry, and that's great. Like, it's a good thing, but it's incredibly dangerous.
I'm just giggling. I'm giggling because of the second bit. It's so good. I think I'm a bit like that, but it generally, the first few times you really put that ambition thing to work, it usually results in a brick wall. And until you learn to balance it, maybe use it at the right times.
So true.
You know.
And I think wisdom comes out of balancing your ambition with your discipline. And because a wise person knows when to pounce and knows like when to throw resources, including your energy and time, at something. But a disciplined person has boundaries, has a structure, has metrics, has measurements, and ultimately, as someone who's now come to Christ, I have a strong belief that God is for me and with me, and that there's enough. And there's a scripture that says that we don't need to plough the paddock to the edges. And in the past, I would plough my paddock to the edge and next door's paddock. So that's a big shift, I think.
It's really good, really good. And I appreciate you being, honest about some failings, some brick walls. I think that's a great, I don't know if that was there a lot, but it's definitely seen, as I've walked with you and seen you grown in that, you've become more able to embrace maybe the pain, be honest about the fact that things are really difficult and hard. I mean, you're an incredibly positive person, ambitious, glass is half full person, but I think you've done a great job the last few years in recognising things can get hard. You got to embrace that. You got to work with it, not pretend it's not there or put your head in the sand. So maybe tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, well, that's well. Thank you, firstly. That's been a big part of being here, actually. Like, actually, yourself and the team here, and ultimately coming to Christ has been the ultimate leadership journey for me, because He's led me through an incredible season of challenge, and it's really humbled me. Like, the more that I've had growth, and then the more I've had failure, the more I've realised that this is very fragile.
Yeah.
Like, what we're doing, where we're going, what we're building is very fragile. And at any point, the most successful, the most strong, the most capable person can be brought to their knees.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately the job of a leader, is to, I think, firstly, be able to understand that these things happen, but secondly, be not too surprised when things come against us.
Yeah.
And be ready to work and deal with the stuff inside me firstly, so I can deal with leading my team. And for me, it came back to my family firstly, and a lot of people are affected by my challenges. Staff lost jobs. Sounds pretty easy to say on here, but that's very painful.
It's huge.
To see people lose their incomes, and then to see my family have to watch them go through court cases and get ripped apart by media and people on the internet, and it still happens today. But all that pushes you back to the man. It's between you and God, and the things that He wants to deal with you in your heart and your mind as you go through this stuff. And
it's really good.
I think that's helped make me, I think, more vulnerable about leadership.
Yep.
Like, this is a bit of a tangent, but I think that if you see someone who sets out and really aspires to a leadership position, you should be concerned. But if you see someone who's building the character of a leader, they're ultimately going to get that position anyway. But someone who sets out to get a leadership position, I don't think has been kicked in the guts by leadership. And I would much prefer to go and work for a prosperous motorcycle company that paid me a good wage, and I just did my job. But I don't believe that's where God
that's something, like, for me, that's something I definitely look for in potential leaders in the church world, is you look for that they're tried, tested and true. You know, there's that provability there, that they've been through stuff, they've overcome personal challenges, they've overcome leadership challenges, because that gives the person that resilience, robustness that, you know, like you said, I think it's a great point. It's part of being a great leader is recognizing that the inevitability of crisis and problems are going to come. Everything works in a cycle. If you're on the top of the mountain high-fiving everyone, it's a great day. Well, a good leader should know, well, at some point trouble's going to come, and if we navigate that well, we stay at the top. If we assume that we'll always be at the top of the mountain, we're going to miss the crisis, we're going to miss the blind spot, and we're going to enter into a period or a cycle of decline, which can be really problematic. And a lot of people, individuals, marriages, whatever, they hit that decline, they can't deal with it, and then it breaks, bankruptcy, divorce, whatever. So I think it's a really good point that the inevitability of that. And I look for that in leaders that have been through stuff, because then when the inevitable comes, they'll be able to navigate it. It's not going to be surprising. They've stuck true and been consistent through their own stuff, so they're going to be a reliable, trustworthy leader. I mean, how many leaders, I mean, you would have seen a lot yourself, do you have that, you know, they can shine, you know, when the sun's shining, and they can shine, you know, when the team's winning every week, but then things go poorly, and they vanish, and those leaders disappear.
And I think as well, like, your ability to lead is proportional to your ability to reinvent and to know those seasons. Because even if crisis doesn't come upon you, I mean, in some ways I had a blessing in that I just got punched in the face, and it was just a bang, like, season change. In one day. It was
dramatic,
Where most people don't get punched in the face like I did. They take 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 years to sort of fade out of the wrong season. And I got reinvented big time.
Well, I suppose you got put in a situation where you had no choice.
Exactly.
You either died,
like
in a business sense, you like turned over.
We did die, basically.
But you've reinvented really, really well. So here's a great question. So what does it take to reinvent then? You've been in a crisis. You've been at the bottom. Like, I was there alongside of you when you were travelling to court, you know, for weeks, months on end. You couldn't even work. Like, your job was to, like, prepare for court. It was just ridiculous. And you've somehow, amazingly, it's a real testament to you and Madeline, your family, have been able to reinvent your business and keep your business, in essence, or keep the brand, reinvent, and you're on the rise again.
Yeah, well,
Like, how did you do that? Teach us.
I think the number one thing for me has been, and I say this to my mates even if they don't believe in Jesus, but the number one thing is that I could get up every morning and get on my knees and say, God, I'm for your glory.
Yeah,
and
wow.
that's that.
Wow.
And
That's so spiritual.
it is. But like,
No, it's true. I believe in that.
To wake up every morning and say that's that. And
Wow.
I want to win. Like, I love winning. Like, I expect to win. I expect to do something great. But I went through a 4-year season of losing. Like, it almost like everything I touched failed.
Yeah. After a massive season of everything you touch turned to gold.
Pretty much.
Like, it's been quite contrasting, hasn't it? Chalk and cheese.
And I had to learn that, like, so number one, like, to be able to somehow transcend the challenges of what's around you as a leader, I think to be able to stand true and stand like in your position and hold your post is incredibly powerful. It's really, it creates persistence, and persistence always pays. But to do that, I couldn't be affected by my outside results. But there comes a time when there's more than that. Like, I think there comes a time when, like, just being able to say, you know what, like, I'm good with or without this.
Yeah, great.
And I turn up and give it everything I've got, winning or losing. There then becomes a time when it's, all right, it is actually time to win.
So are you saying there that part of what you learnt in that season was actually detaching yourself in a healthy way from the business outcome focus and being secure enough in yourself and that's, I suppose, the on your knees. If God's okay with me and I'm okay with him, businesses will come and go, jobs will come and go, money will come and go, and I'm okay.
Yeah, it's true. But then this is the multidimensionalism of, like, being a man, I guess, and especially being a Christian, is that there's more than that as well. Like, there is, like, I do go to work for a purpose. And I do expect to overcome these crises, and I do expect to bring order to all this disorder, and I'm not okay with disorder. Like, I am okay with who I am, and my, no one can attack, my joy and my peace.
Your identity.
My identity's okay, but I'm not okay with losing.
Yeah, great.
And that's a real, I think that's a real challenge that I still wrestle with, and I think everyone I talk to has that wrestle of, like, leading matters a real lot, but also kind of doesn't matter. Some of the things that I do don't really matter as well. And so
it's been able to hold things loosely, isn't it?
That's
like, you want to win and have ambition, and that's good if hopefully it's healthy. It's coming from a healthy motivation. But you've also got to be able to hold it loosely, because so much of the game of leadership and business and that is and other people, community, you can't control. There's so many ingredients that are uncontrollable. So what you can control is your heart, your relationship with God, your mindset, your own money, your own little life. But then leadership is mainly played out in this kind of public sphere, and there's and then this was a part of your journey with the conflict, was that all of these things happened that you couldn't control, and a lot of them were really unfair, and not right and unjust, but you still couldn't control them to a degree.
So true. I think as well, that's what crisis brings upon a leader. Crisis comes back to what is the point in all that I do. And I think it comes back to the fundamental of I'm being formed into something. Like this, there is a purpose to what we do. Whether it's crisis or winning, there's a purpose, and I think that starts with the Lord uses it to form me as a man, and He's maturing me, and character building, all that stuff. But then out of that, we get to lead organisations and groups and a team and go somewhere and do something great, and that's the adventure that I love of leadership. Like, especially in business, like, we're an underdog. We compete against Honda and major corporations. That I love the story of Mr. Honda and how we created something, but I want to win on our racetrack. I want to win in our showroom floor, and I want to win in our vision of what we're trying to do to help people just enjoy motorcycling. And that's like, at the end of the day, we sell motorcycles. It's we don't sell food. We're not doctors. We're not spiritual guides, pastors. Like, motorcycling doesn't really matter. No one needs a motorcycle, really. But it's so important that we, like, that's the. But
that's what you're selling. That you do need a motorcycle.
Exactly. You should buy a motorcycle. But no,
in the scheme of life. Yeah.
And I think that we come back to, like, the adventure of leadership allows us to grow and mature so much. And I love the idea of being someone who's growing, taking others to grow, to achieve something. I think that's an important part of life. And I've really noticed that from a business point of view, the more that I focus on leadership and my character development and my leadership skills, the more this adventure of leadership actually has a real purpose, way beyond selling motorcycles. And I would say like an eternal purpose. Even if you don't yet know Christ, you'd have to acknowledge that your job and your leadership and your decision to lead and to grow forms something in you. And ultimately, that's way more important.
And I think forms something in you, but also contributes something externally.
So
like
true.
I think everyone, you know, if we're honest, I think everyone surely could say, you know, your life, your work, your leadership, it contributes something to the world that goes beyond a material thing. There's a spiritual element. You know, we're at the end of the day, we're spiritual beings. Like there's so much more tied often to people's jobs. And people want that conscience element to their job. You know, like if you work in an industry or a job where you're being asked to do things and you're doing things that go against your conscience, like you either like end up super depressed or you end up having to change and become this corrupt person that you never were. And, you know, because there is a spiritual kind of conscience, deep heart element to what we do. And no one can go and do a job that violates their conscience and last for very long, because we're not built like that as humans. We can't go, well, it's a job and I get a paycheck. Yeah, it violates my conscience, but I need the money to feed my family. Like people don't work like that, do they? Because we are contributing something to the world. It's deeper than just a material thing and a paycheck. There's a conscience, spiritual element to that. We want to give something back that's good. You know, you don't bump into mafia bosses and they're like, you know, these super relaxed, satisfied, peaceful people, positive. You know, they're not, because it's a corrupt industry. So you become corrupted.
So interesting.
Which is what you were saying, but the opposite to what you were saying before, which is where, in a healthy sense, being a leader actually makes you into something incorruptible or something clean or something that we got to mature, something that we got to be better. You know, so it's really,
so
really
true.
good.
And I think that from that, like I learned that leadership is not based on your position on an org chart. It's got nothing to do, in my opinion, based on where you sit. It's got everything to do with the state of your mind, the state of your heart, your decision to turn up and say, I'm going to add more value. I'm going to be responsible for making sure whatever I do, I lead, I grow, I build leverage and make it better. And ultimately that aligns to part of our call as Christians as well, to bring order to this world. And,
that's it.
Anyone can relate to that, whether you're the admin person or the marketing person or the cleaner. Like, come to work and lead what you've been given. And
it's really good. So what about when you were young? What was your biggest leadership lesson maybe then? And tell us a bit about that, because I think I know for you it's your story, and you know you might not find it that interesting, but I think it's fascinating. I think it's fascinating. You left school, you're trading, you started BRAP. Like, tell us a bit about maybe starting BRAP, winning Young Entrepreneur of the Year.
Well, I reckon
twice. Like it's pretty impressive.
Oh, thanks.
Like, what did you do well, and what did you learn in that season?
My kind of mantra was that vision overcomes challenge. Let's just think bigger. Let's cast a bigger vision. Let's. That's it, really. Let's just build a bigger whatever we're going for. And
that was kind of the principle you operated on as a young guy.
And no matter how big our challenges get, let's just get a bigger vision.
Wow.
And,
that's amazing.
I would say I was naively ambitious. As a 20-year-old, it's like, let's do it. If they can do it, we can do it.
But there's an element, obviously, that worked in that. Maybe you're a bit naive, but it worked.
I think that's actually an element of leadership. It's a one-dimensional part of, like, say, leadership has many sides. One dimension is your ability to have a vision and just get the job done. Turn off, like, there's so many times. Like, I would never have got up in school if I received an award. I mean, I didn't receive an award. but if
there's another side to the story.
But let's just say I did. My sister did. But let's just say I did receive an award. I wouldn't get up and go get it. There's no way. If they had called my name out at school, I would pretend I wasn't there, because I would not get up but I had to, because the vision I had, and I was so convicted of, like, we can do this and this is worth it and this is my passion and I'm inspired to go and see this vision become something.
Yeah.
And I think I'm obsessed, still to this day, even as a Christian, I'm obsessed with seeing the things that I see actually become reality.
Right.
And that's stuck with me even now, even though my leadership philosophy has changed a lot, or idea of
You've
leadership.
added to that one dimension some other skills. Yep.
But that was really it. Just let's make it happen, and your feelings and emotions are irrelevant to your vision. And so, like, for example, I became a public speaker. My greatest fear, and I was doing 100 talks a year in front of people that intimidated me, but I did it because
you were like talking to like big banks, and you were the like guest speaker in like all kinds of fancy places.
Rock up go to Tokyo to speak at the Banking Association's conference, and they've got some 23-year-old with a mullet and a flannelette shirt and his hat on backwards, and they asked me to wheel stand my bike in and tell my story. I was so embarrassed.
That's amazing.
They paid me a lot. That helped. But most importantly, it was a part of what I saw as my vision, and my purpose at that time was to tell people about this great Australian motorcycle company, and we're punching the big guys in the face, and
so good.
We're getting growth, and I was obsessed with growing at any cost at that age.
Yeah.
No matter whether it meant debt, no matter whether it meant hire or fire, or no matter I was embarrassed or not embarrassed, or just grow. And,
So it's an amazing skill. Like I hear what you're saying. Maybe it was a bit imbalanced, and of course you were ignorant. We all are at that age. You know, you just don't know a lot. You haven't been around the world. You haven't seen a lot. But amazing. I think leadership element there, that having the vision so big, and I think you still carry that in a more healthy way now, and I think that definitely challenges, me, the way you talk, the way you see me, our church, things like that. No, it's good. It's really good, because I think as a leader, especially once you've been doing it for a while, like I've been in leadership now in different positions for 20 years, since from 18 to 38, I've always been in some kind of leadership responsibility team. And for most of that time as a number one leader. And it's easy to drift into running the machine.
So true.
There's the machine of an organisation or something that just needs to be run, and you just get into that rhythm, and there's jobs to do and decisions to make, and someone might look at you and go, wow, you're really good at it, or that's really complex, but you're like, well, that's just what you do. You just run this machine.
Yeah.
And I think that's really sad, because I think you're missing that the vision that you're talking about, like a bigger vision to be bigger than our problems. What a great mantra.
So
like
true.
That element gets lost. And maybe you look back at yourself and go, it was imbalanced, but it's like, I would probably rather that mentality that you had as a young 19, 20-year-old rather than the old dude who just runs the machine. There's no life, there's no colour. People are getting tired because the vision's been the same for a long time.
It's so true. I think for me, like, there's a list of priorities as a leader. Number one, through crisis, it taught me that your number one priority as a leader is that God is interested in you. Like the man who is the leader, the person that he's forming into a leader. And that's all for a purpose, and we can talk more about our belief system around that. So number one is like the forming of the leadership character, person. Number two, I'd say, is vision. Like vision comes after character, but I think vision comes before wisdom. Like it is important as a leader to have a big vision, and maybe you don't have the resources. Like, actually, no, you don't have the resources to get.
Well,
to
it's
where
not
your
big
vision
enough
is.
if you have the resources. It's not really a vision.
It's so true, and I think we get.
It's just a project that you can execute.
It's so true. I actually think it's a weakness of the church is that, in general, of my observation as someone who's quite
the church in general,
not our church, not you.
Just
No, probably.
No. It's
every church.
Please,
really,
feedback.
Give you a few backhanded compliments. No, is that we so highly value the order of God, and that being, aligned to God means order. That we often diffuse our vision, and what could be, and what we are called to be, and where we're going, and what it looks like. And I think that I've suffered from this as I've gone through a huge crisis. I've let the pendulum of vision swing from like this. I've way overestimated what I could have done.
I love it.
And then I've been kicked in the guts, and I've come back to, I so highly value order, and am so wounded by disorder that I shrink my vision. And I had a chat to a guy who was looking to join me just last week. He's looking to put some money into what we do, and he comes to me and goes, "What's your vision?" And I told him, like, I showed him my current financials. We're very disciplined. We've got good metrics, quite controlled. And I showed him my 3-year projection based on that. And he just looked at me and he goes, "Why'd you tell me that?" And I was like shocked, because I was like, I'll show him the most truthful, probable, based on what's in my hand, 3-year strategic plan that I'm comfortable I can execute. And he goes, he was actually pissed off. He goes, "You wasted my time. Go back." And he said, "Come and ask me for this much money." It was 10 times more than what I was asking him for. He goes, "Come and tell me how you'd spend 10 times and how you'd build a real business."
Wow.
And I was like, he told the kid who like always got in trouble for having too big a vision to pull his head out of the sand and get out of my cave and get back on track with a vision. I thought
really good.
There's something refreshing about having a big vision. And so
Can I just pick up on that point? Because I think I'm probably been in a similar spot the last couple of years in my leadership journey. Is you get your fingers burnt. You lose your. I've definitely, like, my confidence. I wouldn't say I've lost my confidence. My confidence has really been rattled, and it's only natural. I mean, at the end of the day, you are a human. It's only natural to come back to, like, okay, let's do what we can control. You're a bit in survival mode.
So true.
Well, I can do this, and I can earn a wage, and I can have a business, and it comes back, and that's only natural, because vision is all out here. It's what you can't control. That's the point of vision. It's about the uncontrollables and the adventure of having a crack at those and seeing if you can make something happen. And then you get burnt, you lose your confidence, you get discouraged. So it takes courage to achieve a vision. But when you're discouraged, you start losing your courage. You come back to what you can control. And most people live here. My marriage is in maintenance mode. My job's in maintenance mode. My career is like, well, I can earn this, and I'm here now, and I'm just going to do everything I can to hold on to this level I'm at now at work and this paycheck and live out of that. But the problem with arriving at a level and being okay with that is the fact, exactly what you're saying, Brad, I love it, is you lose all the colour. Because maintenance mode is dreary. It's a rainy day. It's surviving another day. And that is no mentality to bring life, to bring colour. And I think you're totally spot on what you're saying in the church world, because that's something I've really wrestled with, because I'm not the colourful dude. But that's why I married my wife, because I was like the boring, like, canvas, and she was like colour and fun and exciting. I was like, oh my goodness, I got to marry that, because and I'm not that, and I'm never going to be that for our church. I'm not going to be adding all this colour and fancy and ideas, and I'm not that. I'm the dependable, responsible guy who speaks well, and so I can give you the spine. But I've got to build people in my team and empower people like yourself who are going to go, hey, why don't we try this, and what about that, and let's give that a crack. And because people at the end of the day, they follow a leader and they follow a vision because it's got colour and life, and it's because it's got ambition. They don't follow. They like dependable, trustworthy. That's a necessary ingredient, but they don't. That doesn't really inspire emotion, inspire the imagination. So I've personally had to learn to build that into my leadership, because it wasn't natural. I'd just be like, look, this is what we're going to do and where we're going to go, and it's really rational. Like, can't you see it? And then I realised, well, people don't think like me.
So true.
They want, like, this is big and it's colourful, and it's like, oh wow, I feel emotions and my imagination. So I've had to learn to add that element to how I talk and how I lead, because that's how most people work.
I think you've done that well. Like, it might not be your natural state to cast a big vision, but there is a big vision here. Like, even just the other week, we had a leaders meeting. You were casting a vision of how many people live in our local region and the epidemic of meaninglessness and unfulfillment. Like, people are unfulfilled in our region, which our purpose as a church is to see people flourish and know Jesus and know who they are. And I think you've done good at that, but that comes down to the leadership of, like, you've got to cast a vision and find the who. And I think that's why I'd say characters first. Like, always be allowing God to form your character as a man who is a leader. Number 2 is vision. Like, never forget that. I just keep getting reminded as I'm sort of going through the 3 shifts that God is so much bigger than I realise. Like, there's so much more available to me than I realise, and I could do so much more than what I rationally think every day. And I've got to carve out time in my day to just think about that, to visualize that, to see what things could be, and to be a bit crazy. And that taps into the hearts of the people I lead, because most of them don't want to follow someone who's got a rational plan.
No.
Like, you look at look at Elon Musk. I love him. But you follow Tesla. Only just started making money. I have to check the markets, but only I think it was a year ago they made money. Like, you're a business. He just cast huge vision. Wild. And people love it.
Love it, yeah.
And anyway, I think that's a good point. And then the wisdom comes.
Yeah.
How are we going to actually do this?
Yeah.
What battles are we going to take on? Where are we going to take ground? What's our defense? What's our disciplines? I think the wisdom and discernment part of being a leader is just really starting to click into to what I'd say the fourth part is leaders win.
Yeah.
Where does humans want to win?
Yeah.
We want to go somewhere. We want to achieve, and we want to be successful. And I think if we've got great character, we've got huge vision, we've got the ability to be wise and seeking the wisdom of God, then ultimately let's win. Let's take ground.
I love that. So how do you find these things outworking? That's your business world.
Yeah.
But then you're a leader here in the church.
Yeah.
And you've mentored people, and people seek your wisdom, not only in business but also in spiritual things. And so how do you think there's a difference between the two worlds? Do you think obviously leadership principles should carry over in all parts of life, and that's kind of what this podcast is about, is that leader everywhere. But where do you see differences or different emphasis, or I don't know, there's got to be some difference.
Yeah. Well, not really. My business life is an overflow of my relationship with God.
Yeah.
And that's that number one of the character. I couldn't have a godly character and align to his plans that are to prosper me and to see flourishing. I couldn't do that if I didn't spend time with him. So I think the thing is, when I come to church, the ultimate goal is to point people to Christ, because I've had such a rich experience of meeting Jesus. I want everyone to know that. My whole life has changed because people like you and other people led me to Jesus. And ultimately, I could have this source of life that doesn't rely on the leader. He is the leader. So at church, it's 100% pointing to him and the vision, and then everything else is to facilitate that. Where at work, who I am as a Christian overflows into the things where, my work is really just my platform to express all those things that God has called me to be and creating me to be. And I'd say my workplace is just my platform.
Okay.
Where here, the difference is that I guess the things we do of church is a platform, but it's so much easier here from a Christian point of view, because you really only come here because you're curious about God, or you're going on for God.
You don't have to be here.
Yeah, you don't have to. Where at work, most of my staff are not Christians. Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting.
And they have to be there.
Yeah, they have to be there.
They're not there volunteering.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's a good question, though, of how it's different, because I think it's an important one to wrestle with for anyone who is a Christian. How do we operate in the marketplace to a non-Christian world that, most of my staff don't want to know about him.
Yeah.
But they're so intrigued at the same time that I am a Christian, and they ask me about him all the time. And,
Well, I think the great story of Christianity throughout history has been that the principles of following God can overflow into what we sometimes call the marketplace, the public sphere, and they work. Yeah. Because servant leadership works, and that came through Jesus. And a moral, ethical business is what people want to see. They don't like corruption. Yeah. Well, that's a Christian ideal, to be honest and to not be corrupt. So all these principles overflow. It's what people want. People demand, a high moral standard of leaders in politics. And, if a politician in Australia has an affair, then their political career is brought into jeopardy.
So true.
And I sit there and look at that and go, why does anyone care? People have affairs all the time.
Yeah.
As a Christian, I think a marriage is sacred, and I think that divorce is wrong and things like that. And I think that God, wants people to stay married. But in the public sphere, I'm like, why does your average Aussie care that if the Prime Minister or a politician or something had an affair? But they do. Yeah. Because there's this moral radar, and we also demand high ethical standards of our leaders. But then it's, that brings up a whole nother conversation, because why do they demand these ethical standards where your average person can divorce their wife if they want to, and we don't demand that of, that's a whole nother conversation. But, I think that overflow of Christian principles into the public sphere is really interesting in that, I think a lot of people wouldn't consider us a Christian nation, and we're probably, becoming increasingly secular, but our roots are in the Judeo-Christian ethic, and so we have a lot of these values. So it's interesting because people want your Christian stuff at work, say,
Yeah.
but they're not necessarily wanting God or wanting to go to a church or something like that.
Well, I don't think that. And I think that's the ultimate thing is with leadership. It's especially Christian leadership. Like, I have to fully respect the free will of the people I lead, which is that some of them are going to reject Christ. Now, my conviction is that I'm a man who serves the Lord, so I want to see people flourish, and I have to give them their free will. But my call is to also to share the good news of who Christ is with them. And I'm convicted by that every day. I think about that and I pray about that at work, of like the balance of seeing my people just be who they are versus I know that God's got a greater call for them and I know that he craves a relationship with them. And like, I've got one guy in my heart at work at the moment, and I know that like there's just such a rest that he will find when he knows Christ. He's got such a busyness and such a anxiety and such a just a bit off, like, and knowing Christ would shift him so much. But I have to fully respect that, you know, he's where he is.
And you can't push your beliefs on him in the workplace. And that line of, I think the interesting line is when you're out there, and this must be a real challenge for you in your workplace, you know, there's got to be that respect of what others believe. Yeah. But then through relationship, you get to share what you believe.
It's so true.
And you want to help people find God because you believe in God. Yeah. But then there's also that, you know, you can't use you've spoke about leverage. You can't use the leverage of your position to proselytize in an inappropriate way. Yeah. So it's that fine line. And I think that's where relationship's important. Yeah. And that's probably another good leadership principle is, yes, you're the boss, yes, whatever, and maybe there's a gap. Yeah. You know, like the coach and the sports star, there's got to be a bit of a gap. Yeah. But then through a healthy relationship and rapport, you know, we share our beliefs as human beings.
So
and,
true.
You know, you can come down to that level even if you're the boss and talk. But as a Christian, you'd want to do that. Yeah. If you didn't have God in your heart, you'd probably just stay aloof as the boss.
So true. And the thing as well is I realise the more I'm aware of this, like the call of a Christian is to make disciples. And I want to, I want to do that at work. So that doesn't mean that I am like my need for relationship and my value of relationship shouldn't offset my ability to share the truth as well. And so, and there's a big gap there, especially in Australia at the moment. It's so offensive to talk to someone with an opposing view about all sorts of things, let alone the matters of their heart. And so I want to do that in a graceful way, and that calls me to pray. Like just constantly as a leader, I find that I'm on my knees more than ever because
so good.
I believe that he's given us ability to administer, like to partner with him in his just desire to see people come into a relationship with him. And I realise that without Christ and the power of who he is, I can't do any of that. So it's kind of pointless. Yeah. So I think that's a part of that first, that step one of leadership is character. Like the man I am is, I hope that I'm a man of God.
Yeah, which is great. That's what I love about God is he's in the man shaping, human making business.
True. Yeah.
He doesn't care. That's great because it's the great equalizer. Yeah. Because leaderships often can go into this thing about, you know, these outer skills and intelligence and whatever. But then God just goes after your heart. He goes after the things no one sees. He goes after things we don't even know about. Yeah. He wants us to be a certain kind of person in secret. Yeah. Where leadership and these kind of things can often be so much about being a certain kind of person, you know, when we're in the light and when people see us, and it's a bit of an act. And I love that about God. It's the great kind of equalizer.
So, can I just say one thing as well? Is that
you can. This is your own interview. I'm interviewing you. You know, you're the man.
But I think that's a sign of a great leadership is his prayer life over what he leads. Yeah. Is that there's just something so powerful about understanding that God's heart is to see your people flourish. Yeah. And that we have the ability to pray for them and see God do things in them and for them. And I just reckon it's a beautiful thing when one of your staff members or teammates finds out that you've been praying for them in secret. Yeah, mate, I've been praying for you on this. I'll write them a letter or let them know. Like, I've just seen people's hearts transformed and wow, like there's just something in it. And
it's really good.
I want to get better at that.
So to bring this to a bit of a close, you've talked a lot about Jesus and your relationship with God, which is really good. And I'm the same. That's where my leadership starts. But maybe outside of that world, what's been the biggest impact on you? Has it been a person, a book? Like I know you've travelled the Middle East with Anthony Robbins and hung out with him. That's one of my favourite stories. Like who's impacted you just in your leadership skills, ability?
Yeah. It's a really good... Well, firstly, I was incredibly privileged to make a fair bit of money as a teenager. So I used that to invest in my education. I just thought, number one, I'm going to get around the best people in the world and learn from them. I thought that would be the best thing I could do as a young bloke. And my wife probably wishes I saved money, but I spent it on learning things. I spent a lot of money. Like following Tony Robbins for a year cost me 250 grand. Like as a 23-year-old, that's a lot of money to spend. And people say that I'm mad, but
no, I love it. I can see your mindset.
Yeah,
wanting to learn.
I got to spend time with 50 people that went to wherever Tony Robbins was in the world every 3 weeks, and most of these people
every 3 weeks.
Yeah, went to Africa. Went to his house in Sun Valley, Idaho.
You've been there?
Yeah.
That's
had
crazy.
a hot tub with him, and you jump in the creek because he has a hot tub, natural hot spring, the only one in, I think, that area, that goes next to a creek and it's snowing. So you jump in the creek and then in the...
That's amazing.
Just something cool.
What's he like to hang out with?
Oh, just like you see on the...
Is he?
Yeah, he's that.
Just great fun.
Full on and
just intensity to the max.
High intensity, really, really... a good man, who's got a
you can
great
see
capacity.
that, can't you?
Yeah.
You see he's just a really good bloke.
Yeah, I'd say, and just a big capacity, a big heart. But I got to spend time with his crew, which was really 50 people who'd made a lot of money. Like, I reckon
Brad.
The youngest, the youngest person above me was probably in their 50s or mid-40s.
And you were 23?
Yeah. So,
wow.
So the average age would be like, late 50s. And most of them made 10 to 100 million and then got divorced, and now they're trying to figure out what's next and
interesting.
find, just recalibrate. And what a great opportunity to study mankind and to learn. And they took me under their wing as kind of like a son, really.
Yeah.
I learned. I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I would do that. That'd be awesome.
It was awesome. So he really...
So when can we get Anthony Robbins on the podcast? Just give him a bell.
There's one statement that we say with TR, it's like, you got to pay to play. He might come on if we pay him. No, I don't know. He'd do a lot of things for free. But it's interesting. I think, so his concept's very powerful. But the people that were on his journey, I learned so much from just the average people who are having a crack, but highly successful people. So
I love even to flip that.
Yeah.
I know Anthony Robbins is big time and big money and huge, but even the way that him as a leader lets people into his personal life, takes them on trips, into his home. I think that's part of the reason why he's so successful. There's this authenticity, this kind of earthiness to what he does.
Yeah.
And that just proves it. And you pay money and whatever. Yeah. But most of the people on the trip have that money.
So true.
But the fact that I think that's interesting that one of the most powerful, leaders, life coaches in the world, how does he see the best way to help mentor, train people? Yeah. That's very interesting. Bring them in close, bring them into your home, spend time together. It's a little bit like Jesus. We won't go back to that. But it's close and personal. It's not all just stage and sit and listen. And I think that's fascinating in itself. And 23-year-old guy, that's the only way you could get near him.
Exactly.
And then you had that phenomenal access.
It's interesting. And there is a money part which most people would trip over and lose all what you just said. But what you said is true. So that was really interesting.
But it's all relevant. I'm not sure that's why you spend the money. So at the end of the day, money is money and whatever, but that's a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Do you know why people pay TR 250 grand for a year? Because if you go to TR, you know that TR wins.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Like you would overlook, I don't know, this is a flippant statement, so leave it. But you
would
would overlook a lot of his imperfections because he's a winner.
Yeah.
And he's known just to win.
It's true.
And so you pay the money to learn his concepts and his skills and why he wins. And the next part of that is how does he make his decisions? Wisdom, I'd say. How does he cast vision? What is his visions? And then the final part is who is he as a man and his character? And it's all similar stuff. So
really good. So big impact.
I think, and then secondly, I'd have to say my mum's a pretty special mum. She's full on. We call her A-bomb. And I've been
A-bomb out there.
She'll probably watch it, probably in the comments, because she does do a lot of Facebook and YouTube. So. No, but one of the privileges of my life has been that I've moved straight into a leadership position of owning my own business.
Yeah.
But I've had a mother and a dad, but especially my mum, who had no fear of rejecting me. Like, we have a special relationship where mum has been constant and live feedback. I constantly laugh about that. Now I've got a wife as well who needs that too. But growing up, like, my mum would give me live feedback on what it is to lead. And still today, I get text messages from her every day because she sees things that I don't see. My nature is to let things slide, to see the best in people. Where mum's nature is accountability, nip it in the bud. It happens now. How you do anything, it's how you do everything.
Yeah, that's great.
And so I need to learn that. And then also my wife, because she taught me what it is to have order, which is an important element of leadership. It's very difficult to follow chaos.
Yep.
And my wife has, like, that's been a huge shift. That's the result of my wife and coming to know Christ.
The women in your life.
Yeah.
And now you have a daughter.
Yeah,
You're getting surrounded.
She's teaching me joy. And then another person which you can read about is Keith Cunningham. I love his concepts. He's a business guy, and he really taught me the element of measurement-based leadership or metric-based leadership, or really discerning, like cutting through all the crap to say, are we winning or are we losing?
Right.
And he taught me a lot about that.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm always trying.
And I like that about you with your leadership, because I think it's where a lot of leadership falls down.
Yeah.
It's like you get 90% of the way, but you just can't nail a scoreboard.
Yeah.
You can't be honest. Did we win? Did we lose? You don't.
Yeah.
The leader can't hold people accountable. Did you follow through on what you said? Win, or did you not? And it's hard. You can do everything so well, but if you can't nail it, it just becomes like, like you go to the footy, and that, my team played well, but we lose every week.
So true. Yeah.
It's like, well, what's the point? Because there's got to end. There's got to be an end product, a grand final, a trophy. There's got to be something you go for. And I think, and that's not being arrogant or ambitious or weird kind of businessman kind of stuff. I think it's just the reality of leadership.
Yeah. You're
leading somewhere, and you're not leading people into a valley.
Yeah.
You want to lead them up a mountain.
So true.
But at the same time, there's grace, and there's reality checks and whatever. But and that's why I think I can hear in your leadership, maybe you started very ambitious and it was like only getting up the mountain, where now you've learnt that, there'll be some avalanches, there'll be some problems, we'll lose some people on the way. We still want to get up the mountain and win, but it's a lot more measured. There's maybe a little bit more grace and time and all of that. I know for me, getting up the mountain's important too, but I've learnt to not take things so personally as we go up the mountain. How to bring in others to help me, because I just thought I could climb Mount Everest on my own. And all right, last any parting shots?
Parting shots? No,
any just incredible wisdom that you haven't shared?
I just like to, anytime I talk leadership, I like to remind people and just drill this home, it's got nothing to do with your position.
Right.
As in, like,
love that.
Are you a
the
business
formal
owner?
position,
Are you the entrepreneur, the business owner, the pastor?
Love it.
You could be the cleaner and take responsibility and be an incredible leader in what you do, not just the role you have, but leadership is a state of the heart. It's a focus. It's a decision. And we lead ourselves, we lead our homes, and we lead wherever we get to go into the workplace.
Love it.
Just an encouragement to keep focused on it and ink some things. Let's write some things down. Don't just get high on the concepts of leadership and trying to create visions and that type of thing. Ink it down. And that's that. So.
It's great. You have an amazing story, like, in all honesty. It's been amazing. But I know you're only part of the way through it. And I'm really excited for the future with you as a leader and an influencer. And I think you've shared 4 great points with us today too. So really well done. That's Brad's leadership story.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you guys for playing such a great role in my journey as a leader. It's important. So
it's fun. Let's keep going.
Just getting started.
I trust you were impacted by that Leadership Lessons podcast. I would love to hear your thoughts about today's podcast. Please comment down below, and please review the podcast and share it with a friend. Doing this inspires us and helps others to find the podcast. See you next time.